What's up guys, it's me LumosTheromax, and after that Q&A video, I'm here to deliver on exactly what you all asked for. It's time for the most up-to-date DC Cosmology video from Microverse all the way to the Dark Void. So DC is pretty wacky and crazy as fuck whenever it comes to its cosmology, so this will be essentially a video discussing the very basics of each dimension or realm, and may not get to absolutely everything ever. And although a great guide, the map of the multiverse, is outdated, and I will be giving you the hookup on the details it misses, or on content that's been altered, retconned, restructured since whenever. So, now keep in mind, I could write an entire book on each individual topic, and honestly I plan to do so in video format on each one of these specific realms, dimensions, etc. But here's the super easy go-to guide when it comes to the current DC multiverse and beyond. First things first, we have the Microverse, which is the subatomic foundations of all of creation. However, in more recent times, it seems to have ties to quantum realities, timelines, and their functions. This may explain why a nuclear experiment gave Manhattan quantum powers, but also Captain Manhattan and his quantum powers as well. Tampering with these planes affect everything above them. We have characters like Kronos, the Atom, and many more that exist inside this subplane. From here, we have worlds that exist inside the Orrery of Worlds. All of these worlds are universes crafted by the World Forger from the lowest plane of existence. We'll discuss this later, don't worry. Or were created as a result of a rogue guardian of the universe named Krona looking back at the origins of creation. If these worlds are healthy and they have a future worthwhile, they float up into the Orrery naturally, into the positive matter existence from below creation, where the World Forger crafts his world. Each world also causes infinite worlds to be spawned from their timeline, and each have infinite dimensions along with their connections to higher planes, such as these here. All these infinite worlds actually exist in the same space. How? They actually vibrate at separate frequencies, which explains how the Flash can vibrate himself at a fast pace to get to different universes, like Universe 2, where Jay Garrick used to exist, or like I guess the New 52 version did at one point as well. The Orrery of Worlds represents spatial dimensions that are infinite in number, and although we only see 52 specific worlds on here, those are only named worlds. There are way more. In Infinite Frontier, it's stated that the Orrery has had so many worlds added to it that it became a mini Omniverse unto itself. All of our mainstay, like Justice League level characters that are from Earths and stuff, live and exist within the Orrery for the most part. This would also include Prime Earth. Prime Earth is the most notable Earth in our entire creation, our entire multiverse, as it is the eldest remaining universe since all others were destroyed by the Crisis on Infinite Earths. Prime Earth is also the origins for all life in existence, since all creations were born after ours, after the first crisis, while our Earth contained the life entity, which is the source of all life in every verse within our creation. It obviously holds most of our main characters and is the main continuity in the entire DC verse. Also within the Orrery of Worlds, but not specifically like a frequency world like any of the others, lies two major cosmological structures that are definitely worth bringing up. The House of Heroes is an old relic of the Monitors, as it has their technology to travel through the bleed itself. It also is a pan-dimensional realm to everything that exists inside the Orrery of Worlds. The Rock of Eternity is also located between what is and what might be in the bleed. The Rock of Eternity is at the center of creation and is a massive force of magical energy that has been kept magic from many other dimensions within like all of the bleed. It contains also many magical prisoners, including like the 7 deadly sins. Also, their warden, the wizard who empowers Shazam, dwells in this place. Now, after every individual world in the Orrery, as well as the Rock of Eternity and House of Heroes, we have vibrational energies that separate the world, as I mentioned earlier, called the Bleed. The Bleed is super complicated, but basically, it's a pan-dimensional realm accessing other entire multiverses in all worlds within the Orrery. We don't normally have access through like physical means. These infinite worlds inside the bleed even include ones with fictional transcendences, such as Earth 33. Traveling through this volatile plane is super toxic. Flash fact, most heroes just have problems even surviving inside of the bleed. The Fugonauts and Monitors also use these planes for travel as it rotates through a variety of dimensions, including the 5th dimension, which happens to be what people refer to things above, like the Speed Force wall. This is very impressive as it shows it sits beyond just outside of the Orrery of Worlds. Up next, we have the Speed Force wall, or like the Speed Force itself, which is a foundational energy of creation that gives all beings motion. Its starting line is like the Big Bang for the Speed Force and is what connects the Speed Force to both time and space. It exists outside of every universe, every era, and every dimension, making it an omnipresent energy that exists across all of space and time. The Speed Force wall is specifically what contains the infinite energy and is where the Splashes and Speedsters get their powers. Now here's where things get a little bit convoluted, because the Timestream is an outerversal realm that encompasses time and space and allows for travel through one's time stream in general, past, present, and future of all times. The only way to get here is to travel past light speed, which gets you to the Speed Force wall, which means this plane is either on the same, it's like another realm within the Speed Force, or is on the same plane as the Speed Force, or has to exist past that. The quantum realm was also associated with this plane, and the quantum mechanics themselves have to do with every aspect of time and potentiality, of course, and every second that exists, time branching off even more. The Speed Force allows access to this plane and ways to travel across it, as they are also related in dealing with time. Characters like Wave Rider and Time Trapper find themselves here as masters of time. Time is not linear here, and it's super fun to play with, apparently to every DC character. Finally, we hit the God Sphere. This is a place of a variety of archetypal realms that house archetypal gods, ideas, and structures. This is also where all magic is from. This is one of the biggest layers of the map, containing the Dreaming, which holds the idea of the endless pool of the dreamscape, which does contain all stories, and the endless known as Dream. Heaven, which is where the Spectre resides, along with the pathway to communicate to the Presence, and the infinite heavens for infinite souls, as well as the Silver City. New Genesis was born of the new gods, led by Highfather, and they seek out the Source's guidance to overcome what is. Skyland, which is the domain of the old gods, such as the Greek pantheon, led by Zeus and other Platonic old gods. We also have the Nightmare Realm, which represents the counter to the Dreaming and is really fucking crazy with witches, the Goblin Market, the Boogeyman, and more. Hell, being the opposite of heaven in nature, contains many Hell Lords such as Neron and Trigon, and also an infinite amount of Hells for the infinite amount of souls cast there. Apocalypse is the darker half of New Genesis, where darker-minded new gods all forcibly kneel under the heel of Darkseid's might. And finally, we have the Underworld, where many of the gods' afterlives exist, such as Hades, but it also contains really twisted prisons, such as the Phantom Zone. As stated before, many of these realms, and I have to say realms, because they are separate from one another, even though they exist on a similar plane, are completely separate from one another, and have even entire multiverses built into themselves, infinite dimensions, etc., etc. Each of these individually I could write a book on, but for now, the show must go on. Now, it's my personal belief that somewhere in the God Sphere, we have this concept called Hypertime. Now, Hypertime could definitely be argued on a higher plane, but we have gods from the God Sphere consistently manipulating it, so I feel it's safe here, but wouldn't be surprised if we found evidence down the road of it being higher. But what is Hypertime? Hypertime is a pan-dimensional existence that taps into any time, reality, or multiverse that exists, as far as we are aware of currently in our specific creation. Characters exist here no matter what happens to them. Like, even if their universe is entirely destroyed, which separates it from, like, the time stream or an individual, like, timeline. The Convergence event was a good example of somebody utilizing this specific structure Or like Manhattan's machinations by bringing the entire Flashpoint universe back and holding it together and putting it into our time stream during the button event. Limbo, our next layer, is pretty weird. Limbo represents the end of story and matter itself. This is where stories go to die or be entirely forgotten. Those who stay in this place lose their memories entirely, and those who manage to leave it, which are very few in number, never even remember it existed in the first place. Superman wonders if this is actually where everyone goes when they die. For almost all beings in the multiverse, as far as they are concerned, the multiverse ends here. Beyond this plane, you have the Monitor Sphere, where form and meaning surrender to the Overvoid itself. This is important to remember. Beings here look at Limbo, the plane that's below it, as something that they can just hold inside their hands. The beings that exist here, the monitors, feed on stories themselves and hover over our entire creation below it. Once thought to be the highest plane of realities, the monitors use this to rule over nil. Before they were all slain, of course. At least for the most part. Now, everyone wants to know where their favorite fifth dimensional imp and his dimension is actually located, and I've got quite the answer here. Mixie actually explains most of DC cosmology pretty simply, and he explains that spatial dimensions stop the bleed, temporal dimensions stop time, which is like around the speed force, but beyond that, the non-physical or imaginary powers are the things that exist, and the fifth dimension is exclusively the connective material between those higher dimensions or planes, making it omnipresent across the map, like up to at least the sixth dimension, which is a plane that Mixie says he does not have access to, and he is consistently one of the most powerful imps that exists out there. Imps can pretty much do anything they want, and it would be my theory that they, on the map, are the lightning that strikes the Speed Force wall. But that's just a theory. The sixth dimension, which is the dimension I mentioned earlier, beyond the fifth obviously, is the highest plane in our specific DC multiverse that was confirmed. This plane is known as the cosmic control room for all of reality and is used by its most powerful inhabitants, such as the World Forger, the Monitor, and the Anti-Monitor, who are all children of the Super Celestial who created all of our creation, known as Perpetua. This space contains space big enough for entire multiverses to replace the entire, the Orrery down low, and this plane seems to be, in my opinion, once again, one more theory, a space that was disconnected from the Overvoid by the next structure on our list. And I believe that this space was at least at one point in time the Overvoid, which is where we see the Anti-Monitor, the Monitor, and Perpetua having started all of these shenanigans in the first place. I just think it happens to get cut off by the source wall of our entire multiverse. The source wall structure acts as both a barrier to keep Perpetua trapped, but also to contain all things inside of our multiverse or creation, because our multiverse or creation was born flawed thanks to Perpetua. This source wall is impassable to even the most powerful beings in verse, such as Perpetua and her children. Anyone brave enough to try and pass it is eternally stuck to the wall themselves, much like Perpetua and the rest of her former army. The source of our creation itself allegedly lies within the wall, and at times, so do the totality of Perpetua's power, the life and anti-life equations, and crisis as well as anti-crisis energies as well. It is unclear whether the source is inside the wall, is the original source, or the one that the Cosmic Raptor used to revert our reality, but this structure and the source within it is the end of our specific multiverse. But we're not over yet. Beyond even our source wall, we find the Overvoid that I referenced earlier. The Overvoid is the blank canvas in which all stories are written or created. Now, originally, this was meant to be the paper on which comics were written, like every single story ever was written, but as time has went on, it's evolved into the idea where all stories, quote-unquote, are created by super celestials known as the Hands, by creating a multiverse. The Overmonitor, or Overmind, seems to be the consciousness of the Overvoid, and it can recognize flawed creations upon itself and recognized that Perpetua had created a flawed creation in our multiverse. There are beings capable of walking upon the Overvoid and perceiving it, and those who can refer to it as the greater Omniverse. It would appear that there is an infinite number of creations within the Overvoid, and also seems to be a variety of beings who can wander around the greater Omniverse itself, such as the Judges of the Source, the Cosmic Raptor, the Hands, the Present, Lucifer Morningstar, weird dude who hangs out with Lucifer Morningstar, the Chronicler, some of the Endless, and there's like plenty more. I could be here all day on this list, I swear. Now, there are also a few different structures that exist within the Overvoid itself. Recently, I feel like we've gotten a few things exclusively on the emotional spectrum existing somewhere past our source wall, indicating that it should be indeed in the Overvoid. This is important because as the Hands spread creations, they created life in them, and thus the light of life was spread further. Pure emotional beings like Kyle could even transcend the source wall entirely and replenish that emotion. Pretty safe to say that the emotional spectrum itself is an omniversal energy, to say the least. Now, those who represent everything that is on the Overvoid or in the Omniverse, same term, represent the light that is in creation. Although everyone debates on the matter, it's clear to me that the Presence created everything in the existence that is, including the Overvoid or the greater Omniverse. After all, the Hands get source energies from the presence of the source, the original source outside of our home multiverse that created the Omniverse. Chances are the Presence is the most powerful dude we have currently and is most likely the right hand of light that shook the hand of darkness in this panel. Well, who is this hand of darkness then? Well, that hand of darkness is actually that of the great darkness, or the nothingness that was before creation itself, being the Overvoid or Omniverse, was actually even created. Basically, the great darkness is nothingness personified, and really it's just super salty and wants to go back to sleep, but the more the light expanded, the more it hurt the dark because it replaced nothingness with something, and that nothingness is it. The dark was considered a rival to the light to the point where they had to negotiate, or at least were even in power, both the light and the dark, which led to the Great Compromise. However, if the Great Darkness is compromising with the Hand of Light, and the Hand of Light is compromising with the Great Darkness, it's understandable that they scale at least somewhere around the same level. Basically, pretty much everyone who was evil ever was the Great Darkness's avatar, and we might be able to speculate that it's this domain, this place, is known as the Otherplace, the Abyss, or even the Dark World, or even the Void Beyond all. Now I know what you're thinking. Wait a minute. But Lumos, oh my god. How could you possibly forget about all the other places that could possibly exist across all of DC? Well, hey, chill the fuck out. There's a billion places I'm sure I didn't manage to get to talk about specifically within this video, but there are a few more I do want to quickly discuss that have some rather weird and or really suspect ranges for where they could be. So the Antimatter Universe, although named a universe, definitely has a way bigger structure than its name implies. During the 2018 run, they actually claim that the furthest reaches of the Antimatter Universe extend out to the furthest reaches of creation, and for them, that would be the Source Wall. It's also another realm created by Perpetua to be one of the major 3 realms in reality, this one representing antimatter, which is meant to entirely destroy anything it comes across, and this is reinforced in the idea that just being in the Antimatter Universe has no willpower, it negs magic, extra powers, your bomb, your cat, your dog, it negs everything, dude. The Antimatter Universe is wacky. It finds itself to home to characters like the Anti-Monitor, the Sinestro Corps, as well as like the Weaponers of Court. Now, the Dark Multiverse is super, very sus, okay? Originally, it was meant to be the lowest plane in creation for the World Forger to create worlds in, but when he was slayed by his pet Barbados, Barbados began corrupting the place with new twisted realities born out of the fears of those in the above positive universe. instead of creating new worlds out of the element X from the Forge of Creation found in this place. It's probably, I think, the only major cosmological place down here. Logically, the Dark Multiverse should not extend past the Bleed or Orrery of Worlds, since this is where he would release those worlds. However, Mandrak fell off the side of the multiverse and landed in the Dark Multi. And the Otherplace, which surrounds the Dark Multiverse, had access to our plane once the source wall broke. Even at a low wall, that would have to mean the Dark Multi is at least Orrery of Worlds to highball source wall range. I feel a little bit safer about the source wall range. The Fusionauts, as I mentioned earlier, run the Brainfold Interior, which seems to be what I would consider the dimensional superstructure of creation, or they're like the barriers between space-time, space-time, pretty much everything, and is even like a hypertime abstraction itself. This would make sense, as like I said, they're essentially just monitors, and they even look at monitors as somebody who have like similar jobs to them, and they both come from the light. This should honestly be like the Bleed, but it's not the same. I would assume that chances are this is because they are protecting the positive universes from the Dark Multiverse. So logically, it should extend out to wherever the Dark Multiverse does, at least. Now, last but not least, we have the Otherplace. And you heard me reference it earlier, but it's a little bit weird. Originally, the Otherplace is a plane below the God Sphere and is tied to some darker multiverse, possibly the Dark Multiverse. But the next time he appeared, it seems people had other things to say about where the Otherplace sits. Upside Down Man, who seems to be running the place, is stated to be a being from beyond the void, or Overvoid, and here has statements of being from beyond the source wall and from the Great Darkness directly. So this is most likely in the domain of the Great Darkness itself. I feel like that's super solid. I don't think it was originally intended to, but that's definitely where the Otherplace is winding up. And that seems pretty straightforward with the continuity that we have, even in the newest stuff.
Yo, one real quick last editor's note on one last cosmological structure. We have the Metaverse. And the Metaverse is a rather peculiar thing. Originally, the Metaverse was more so quantum related, but has been retconned into something far greater than just an infinite number of universes with infinite shadow reality spawning from them. The Metaverse is something that is tied exclusively to Earth Prime, but it seems to scale way past anything in our particular multiverse, as seen even when Dr. Manhattan gave up trying to defeat it. The Metaverse is an ambiguous hope-like entity that guides Earth Prime's story back into creation regardless of what happens to it. But how high it scales, outside of just being stronger than Dr. Manhattan who can travel the Overvoid, seems to remain unknown.
So that was my entire breakdown of the most essential and important DC cosmology that I could possibly deliver you guys. So I hope you absolutely love this. Slam the like, slam the sub. Be sure to give me a sick-ass comment down low of the next thing you guys want me to cover, especially if you want more of this cosmology content, because this was hard as fuck to do, but it was super fun to make this video for you guys. So without any further ado, it's been an absolute blast hanging out, Lanterns. Be sure to both like and subscribe to both myself and the coffee shop content creators down below, links in the description, and we'll see you next time, Lanterns. Later.